Hello, I'm Abigail DeJarnett.
My name is Allison Lind.
I'm your host, Grant May.
My name's Noelle Fitchett.
And welcome
back
to the Counteract podcast.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the weekly briefing with Grant May. As you may have guessed by now, my name is Grant May, and I am your host for today. It's been a long time since we last recorded an episode. Had a bit of a sabbatical after the Counteract conference. I flew home that Sunday, and on Monday I started a new job. So very happy at this new job, but it's been very busy. So I'm happy to be back with you. Currently at my new job, I'm working on policy at the state level. So kind of crafting policy, making politics friendly to families once again. So I'm not going to tell anyone where I'm working because I don't want to self-dox myself. But all I can say is the Lord opened a door and I am super thankful for it. So excited to be back with you though. Kind of had to address that elephant in the room first. I apologize for the long content drought, but man, when I was gone, I feel like I missed so much. But what with World War III almost starting in the Middle East, but let's be real, World War III is almost always starting in the Middle East. Then we had a second attempt on the life of our president, Donald John Trump. Yeah, they tried to shoot your president for a second time, and they failed. And what are you going to do about it? What are patriots like you and I going to do with the fact that they've tried to kill our guy twice and we still have a month until the election? You know, when good men refuse to do anything, when good men are silent, the triumph of darkness and evil is inevitable until we make our voices heard. Then we also had the vice presidential debate. We had Tim Walz versus J.D. Vance, and J.D. Vance mopped the floor. Then we had hurricanes come and devastate a lot of this country, specifically Appalachia, the rural areas. And then the traders that occupy our government spent all of their money. They spent it all on illegal immigrants, and then they shipped it to foreign countries. One day, Secretary Mayorkas came out saying that FEMA was out of money after they had spent $600 million on illegal immigrants. And literally one day later, he announced $150 million more to be sent to Lebanon to help with humanitarian efforts. It's easy to think that these people are just incompetent. It's easy to think that we could just laugh at the gross negligence that our government officials have. But I think that really misses the heart of what is actually happening. They hate the people of rural Appalachia. When Hurricane Helene tore through North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, Georgia, and South Carolina, not only did they not do anything, they actively rubbed our noses in the fact that they were taking our money through taxation. They're taking our money, they're spending it on foreign invaders, and then they're spending it on foreign countries rather than on our countrymen who that money should be helping. These people are traitors to our country, and they should be held accountable for their actions. Now, I know I could monologue on and on about this betrayal, but I also think that would be an exercise in futility. Maybe if I screamed into the internet enough, it might make a difference, but more than likely, no change will actually be affected until real American patriots like you and I, until we take control and take charge of our government and we actually start to subvert the subverters that currently occupy it. What do I mean by that? Our country is currently ruled by a class of people that gets dopamine rushes from attacking the founding stock of this country. This isn't the 1980s anymore. This isn't the 90s. This isn't the 2000s. In order for us to return to a place where this once again felt like a unified country, where we feel like the government actually cared about our people, then it's going to take a strategic push through the institutions, similar to the left's push from the 1960s, where they had their long march through the institutions. And they eventually took power back, and then they used that power to reward their friends and punish their enemies. If you're a young man with ambitions, if you see the degradation of your society, the inheritance that was passed down from your forefathers being intentionally melted down into a crucible, and you recognize that the crown of American heritage has never been more in the gutter than it is today, and that crown is waiting to be taken up. the time has come for the crown to be claimed from the gutter. But it's going to take something that a lot of us don't actually have, and that's tact. At this point, there's really no way I could go get my start as a bureaucrat working in Washington, D.C. I have far too much of a digital footprint in my past for that, and I'm only going to be able to affect change from outside the system. You could, however, take an alternative route to power. But the way to do that is, and I know I'm sidetracking right now, but I actually think this is really important. The way to do that is holding our cards close to our chest, pursuing the things that they actually care about. What do they care about more than anything? Credentialing. You got to go to an elite institution. You got to keep your values close to your chest. Don't be an idiot if you get a job working for the State Department. Bide your time. Take the opportunities when they present themselves, and until you have the opportunity to actually let them know just how radical you are, and I say radical when I really just mean you have normal beliefs from 20 years ago before everything went crazy, take the hits, endure the utter contempt and the scorn for patriots like you and I, and then advance in the institutional power. And like I said, don't be stupid. And boom, we've successfully subverted the subverters. We have completed the long march through the institutions that no other conservatives have been able to do. So there's also a reason so few people are actually able to successfully accomplish that. And that's because it's really hard. I spend so much of my time telling people that they need to speak up. They need, to care about political matters. They need to steward their citizenship well. That the price that the noble pay for not concerning themselves in politics is being ruled by lesser men. And all of that is true. But if you want to be really big-brained about it, really high IQ, a map strategist, if you will, then you got to hold your cards close to your chest until you can actually force these traitors out of Washington, D.C. on a rail. A railway, okay? Repeat me, we would never suggest putting traitors that vote to send the money of Appalachia to Lebanon when Appalachia was underwater on a rail as they were covered in feathers, kind of like 1776 style. No. We just want to give them a nice one-way ticket on the Amtrak, baby. Economy class. Then if they're in economy class, they'll actually have to confront the results of their policies firsthand. So they'll see the multicultural reality that they orchestrated, and they'll be forced to live with it on the Amtrak, baby. But then again, I digress. I get myself so worked up sometimes, and I just have to remind myself that Christ is on the throne. Okay. So today, another thing I want to talk about is a different type of trader. We talked about the people in DC sending our money overseas, but there are times when I really think that I understand the left and that nothing that they can do will shock me. I think I understand their moral bankruptcy, and then they just shock me all over again, and I'm astounded by their own brazenness. But before I get to our main news story of today, I have some very exciting news. Have you had enough of supporting companies that don't share your values? Well, it's time to switch to Patriot Mobile. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. They put the cause ahead of profits, and that is why we here at Counteract USA are excited to partner with them. With Patriot Mobile, you get reliable nationwide coverage on all three major networks. Same great coverage, but without the funding to the left. When you switch, you're supporting the First and Second Amendments, the sanctity of life. We love the sanctity of life, don't we, folks? We're supporting our military veterans and first responders, plus their 100% US-based customer service. Make switching easy. You can keep your number, your phone, or upgrade, whatever works best for you. Go ahead and visit patriotmobile.com/counteract or call 972-PATRIOT and get 1 month free with the offer code COUNTERACTUSA. That's 972-PATRIOT with the offer code COUNTERACTUSA. Make the switch today, patriotmobile.com/counteract, 972-PATRIOT. Alrighty, well, so obviously we know that the left is morally bankrupt on a lot of issues. And the only issue they're really choosing to run on in 2024 is the right of women to be able to murder their own children. up to and including moments after birth. We see this, it came up in the first debate. We were lied to by the moderators and by Kamala saying this isn't happening. Tim Walz repeated that in the VP debate. But we know from just his state alone, 8 babies were born alive, and then they were left to die or forcibly their lives were ended by abortionists. So this is happening. And we all know it's happening, but they still try and pretend that it's not. It reminds me of this Solzhenitsyn quote, which I know I'm butchering that name, but he was a Russian dissident who went to the Gulag, and he said, "They are lying. We know they are lying. They know they are lying. We know that they know that we know that they are lying, but they're still lying." And that's ultimately what it is. They control the press, and with the press, they control the masses. And I don't quite know how we're going to get out of that quite yet. But I think outside the abortion issue, there's generally areas where most Americans think that there's general consensus regarding social taboos. One of those issues, I would contend, would be the issue of pornography. The widespread pervasiveness of pornography within society has long been one of those kind of untouched skeletons in the closet that both sides knew existed, but neither really wanted to come out and take a public stance on until it was too late. At this point, something like 73% of teenagers in this country have been exposed to pornography. And that's just the people that have admitted to it. The number is probably a lot higher based off my experience, the youth that I've worked with. I have a pretty extensive background in working with youth who come from good families where parents are very involved in their life and vigilant. It's just gotten to a point where it's virtually everywhere and it's near impossible to avoid it. And so it would be good for the government to actually step in and regulate and restrict it. This is one of those moments where you kind of see this divergence between the true conservatives and the libertarians. There's a lot of issues where we can have common cause on, but libertarians often idolize and absolutize markets. And when you try to have a conversation about regulating or banning pornography, they start clutching their pearls and say, but that's big government overreach, big government bad, oh, free market's good, I love big porn. And it's like, calm down, bro. The conservatives are over here like, dude, I like markets. I like free markets too. But when those free markets are actually being used by Satan to steal, kill, and destroy the people living in our country and the future generations of this country, then maybe we should step in. Maybe the government actually does have a job and to restrict these vices that make people prone to sexual violence, that often warps their desires, making them seek the next big dopamine hit, which if you want to get into another conversation, it is that pornography is leading to some of the record rates of LGBT identifying individuals. So libertarians, you still want those free markets, my guy? Free markets are good, but absolutizing the free market over the common good is never a good move. So porn is bad. Don't watch it. Protect your eyes. If you do watch it, most likely you were probably exposed to it. Then that's what the numbers say. You were exposed to it at a young age when your brain wasn't fully formed, and then you got trapped in a cycle, a vicious cycle of sin that leads nowhere good. And there's only healing in the name of Jesus. This porn industry is $1 billion industry, and it's predicated on the exploitation of many, whether it is the people that are depicted in porn or it is the exploitation of the people viewing it. One of the greatest tells of all time was when state legislators started waking up to the evils of pornography, and they said, hey, we're not going to ban it entirely, but we at least want to make sure that the people visiting these sites have age verification, that in order to access the most graphic material you can actually think of, you have to prove that you're over 18, which seems like a bare minimum. And so once states passed that, both blue states and red states were able to work together on this. Then the porn companies started retroactively pulling all their content from those states. They started blocking access. Like one of these states, the state I currently live in, Virginia, it's a blue state. They did this, and Pornhub, which is like the biggest of the companies, pulled out and blocked access for all users, even if they were over 18, which is just one of the greatest tells of all time. Like just because minors can't access their content, then they're going to stop everyone. It tells you a lot about who their probably prime demographic is, and that's really sad. Rather than just do their due diligence to ensure that they weren't exposing those 10-year-olds to the most graphic and depraved content on the internet, they said, okay, maybe it's not worth it. And they pulled out of the state entirely. That's just a massive win for these states like Texas, Mississippi, Utah, Louisiana. And it tells you a lot about the porn industry. Anywho, this past week, I was at work and I came across this thing, a new group called Hands Off My Porn. It's an organization that just launched, and their goal was to raise awareness and rally support against Project 2025 and secondarily raise awareness against President Trump. This group announced that they had spent $100,000 and they were committing to spend that in 7 different pivotal swing states in strategic ad buys designed to convince young men to vote against Donald Trump out of fear that he would restrict their access to this pornography. Super sick and depraved stuff, obviously, when the central ethos of your message is, hey, vote for me. And if you're a young guy, you can watch porn as much as you want. And if you're a young girl, you can kill as many babies as you want. You might not be the good guys if that is your main message. And why is this group, this Hands Off My Porn group, doing this? To me, the answer is pretty simple. They recognize that Kamala Harris has virtually no appeal with young men. If you're a young man and you're out here campaigning for Kamala, you're probably either dumb, you're probably either a communist, you're probably gay, or you may be all three. I'm kidding, of course. It's all jokes. But the truth of the matter is young men today are more right-wing than they have been in a long time, and the numbers back that up. I don't even know if the older people realize just how right-wing young men are becoming. Study after study keeps illustrating how there's like this gender divide, that whereas the same time young men seem to be breaking extremely hard right, the young women are trending in the exact opposite way of young men. They're going really hard left. So if you're a young lady and you're listening to this, if you're a young lady and you still hold on to some of the right-wing values, you're one of the good ones. We love and we appreciate you. But for the first time in American history, another interesting trend that the New York Times this past week reported on is that for the first time in American history, young men are more religious than young women. Their church-going rates are higher, their outward identification is higher. And this is the first time, like I said, that this has happened in modern American history since they started tracking it. So that's another interesting development to keep your eye on. And I don't want to be demeaning to the guys, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to put the pieces of this puzzle together. Why are they committing $100K to these ad buys? Well, it's because porn has a uniquely strong shackle latched around the ankles of so many young men. Satan obviously is not a fan of the rising rates of right-wing young men who are taking God seriously and then applying God's moral framework to the world that we live in, which essentially is being right-wing. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that he has mobilized his forces here on Earth in order to hopefully regain his footing, if not on this generation, then on upcoming generations, through entrapping them to this exposure to porn. If they continue to ratchet up levels of exposure to these children who most people, when they're exposed to this stuff, the average age is around 10 years old. And their brains aren't fully formed and they become dependent on this material. If they're able to be successful in this, then the left will have successfully created a docile army of Reddit atheists just awaiting orders. I firmly believe that this is one of the great moral issues we are facing, and it's one of the most powerful weapons that Satan has in this world, specifically targeting young men. Oftentimes in the West, we can neglect sort of this reality of spiritual warfare and how the devil actually is currently prowling around like a lion, seeking people to desire. He employs countless ways of doing this. But today, there are few that are more powerful in the lives of young men. It's pretty wild that political parties and leaders are actually buckling down and fully supporting this issue loud and proud. Like I said before, I thought for the most part, there was a general consensus that this stuff was bad and a net negative to society. But now, that's how morally bankrupt the left is at this point. They can't even agree on that. Last weekend, I saw these two young guys who are these sort of chronically online DNC influencers, and they were at this tailgate. And I guess they were trying to relate to like actual dudes by attending a college football tailgate, which was really funny to me. The problem is that all these dudes, the real college kids, they see this image of Trump. Whenever they think of Trump, they just see him raising his fist after being shot in the face and blood streaming down his face. And it's like instantly, oh, that guy's like the American emperor. Like, if you don't vote for him, you're on the wrong side of history. Anywho, these two DNC guys were doing this totally normal activity, channeling like their inner angst by throwing these glass plates against a wall, and they would like write names on the plates and then throw them at the wall. By the way, they didn't have great throwing form, which makes me sad that they like never threw the football growing up. But one of these guys, his name's Chris Maury, and he had written something like, "Trump wants to take away my porn." And then he smashed it against the wall. And I was just like, my first reaction was just like, wow, that's really embarrassing that you're just out here basically admitting you're voting for someone solely based off the fact that you're enslaved to your most based and grotesque desires. And when I say based, I don't mean like based in the cool right-wing esoteric way. I mean base as in like disgusting, degenerate, human nature desires. Like, you enjoy watching other people have sex so much so that you want to vote for someone who will protect that right of yours. That seems like a major cell phone to me, but I don't know, maybe that's just me. At the same time, though, I realized that I should also feel incredible empathy for this individual, because more than likely, this guy too was just a product of exposure to this horrific, degenerate stuff at a really young age, and that it's permanently rewired his brain. Long story short is pornography is ravaging the lives of so many young people. The left knows this, and that's why they're doubling down on it. And young men like you and I, we can't succumb to this. Don't fall for their treacherous ploys. They hate us, and because they hate us, they want us enslaved to their vices, and they want us to be dependent on them for their political rule. You know what? That's not going to happen. We are going to crucify our flesh, and we're going to tell those demons to pound sand. Anywho, that's kind of all I got this week. Thank you so much for tuning in to the weekly briefing with Grant May. As always, I am your host, Grant May. This episode was a little more targeted towards the fellas, so if you're a dude, go ahead and share that video. I think this is important. It's something we should be discussing. Like, recognize the power the enemy has over you, over your peers, and recognize that he's very active right now. He recognizes he's found something that works. He's found a weapon that works, and he's deploying that. And his demons are marching in force, trying to promote it and propagate it. Don't fall victim to the enemy's schemes. And you can only do that through the power of Christ in you. So it's important to have first things first. But as always, my name is Grant May. Thanks for tuning into the weekly briefing. We'll be back next week, and I will talk to you guys then.